Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode. Before we continue, I want to just let you know that here at Off the Deep End Podcast, we do talk about some things that can be extremely triggering for some of the listeners, whether it's domestic violence, suicide prevention, mental health resources, veteran stories, active shooters, fitness, and even recovering from addictive substances. There's only one place I go to spread my message of positivity about not just going through things, but growing through them as well. For this, I use Anchor.fm. It allows my listeners to listen on over 7 platforms with a click of a button. Make sure you download Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started sharing your story. All right, we are live. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. As always, I'm your not so broken anymore host, Eddie, and I'm here with my brother Russ. I just got done learning a little bit on the mats from him, and holy shit, gotta be honest. He's been doing this for a little bit, so you can see the time and effort he's put into it. But I appreciate you making the trek up here. I appreciate having your time, your experience, and just sharing your company, my brother.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. I think getting the rolls in before we started the pod was an awesome idea. It's a lot of fun, great way to kind of warm up and get things flowing.
Hell yeah, man. So why don't we start from the very, very beginning, the nitty gritty stuff?
Absolutely.
What was it like for you as a child?
I had an interesting childhood, right? So my family immigrated to the U.S. in '96. I was like 4 years old around the time. So I grew up here with my mom. We grew up down south in Washington State, right? So down south around Tequila, Kent Renton area. So this is where kind of like a lot of my childhood stemmed from. So in terms of like martial arts, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's tough to kind of put an exact time of when my journey started with it, but like earlier on, like my mom had always put me into like some kind of different martial arts, right? As a kid, like taekwondo, karate, growing up. Doing some like I did basically a school of like I guess you could call it like kind of an MMA style, right? Where there was like some grappling involved, striking, like a lot of like control stuff and whatnot on the feet. It was almost like Sambo-esque kind of style, right? So something like that earlier on. Then when I was older, I actually got into boxing for a while. Did a couple of years of boxing, just like traditional, just pure stand up, no kicks, nothing like that. So I did that from when I was like I want to say 16 to about 18, 19, something like that for a little while there. And then, it just kind of dropped off, right? Got into partying a little bit more. So my time was occupied in like different ways, right? But again, that's kind of, part of being like, I guess, growing up in a different route, right? But yeah, and then I didn't really do a whole lot martial arts related kind of, up until a couple of years ago. A lot of the podcasts started getting bigger, like Joe Rogan, Jocko. And I actually had a couple of friends who were like involved in MMA, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And like, I started kind of talking to them about it. Like, well, they talked to me about it actually first off, right? And I was kind of like, initially I was really like hesitant kind of almost. I was like, man, what do I need that for? Like, I mean, I'm not like getting into street fights, right? Like I've always been like a pretty big dude, you know what I mean? So like, people never really exactly like pick fights with me off the off the get-go, right?
That's good, man.
And I'm not a very like confrontational person, right? So I would never really put myself in that situation to begin with, kind of, right? But yeah, so initially I was kind of like, man, what do I need that for? Like, what am I, and like I didn't even know what jujitsu was, right? So I kind of imagined it as like traditional kind of like earlier on, karate, taekwondo kind of thing, where like you're wearing the gi and just like doing some kind of
super power moves, Power Rangers
yeah,
shit.
some chi blasts and like I didn't know what it was, right? Like so a buddy of mine kind of got me into it, and this was like during COVID. So we talked about this a little bit before we got started, but I started at Kindred Jiu-Jitsu during like that weird little 1 month period when they kind of opened up, and then they had to close down again, right? So I started off, got a little bit of training there. School had to close down again due to like regulations and all that. And then from there we actually continued on just like rolling in people's garages and just like getting together like this on the mats in someone's house, you know what I mean? And just it would be like 5, 7 dudes would have, 2 pairs on the mats, everybody else kind of chilling, waiting. Next round, new people filter in, other people go out to break, and we'd get in, do rounds like that, and that was kind of like the training for 6-ish months. I mean, I'm guessing right now, right? I don't
Do you
have the.
find it super beneficial to be surrounded by people who really want to practice martial
Oh,
arts?
hell yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like even when you talk to the people, like the passion at which they talk about the subject with, and like just the excitement they get when they're kind of like teaching and explaining something to you, and all those kind of things, it gets you hyped. You know what I mean? So kind of like being around the environment, right? So
Hell yeah,
I think
man.
that's huge. I think that's huge. Absolutely.
So total immersion in this craft. What was it that really drove you to it? Like, because obviously, there's a lot of people who are gonna say, "Oh, why were you practicing jiu-jitsu in a time like that?" Blah, blah. You know what? Like, what was it? Because obviously, like everyone was super careful in 2020. You had your little
Absolutely.
crew, your little quarantine crew.
Yeah,
Where's your
yeah,
jiu-jitsu
yeah,
crew?
yeah.
So to the people who are gonna listen to this and revolt at the idea
Ah.
of getting together, you know what? Like, maybe that's your bubble, that's your crew. I think mental
Absolutely.
health really drained during Rona.
Oh,
When
hell
that
yeah.
bitch showed up,
Absolutely.
like no one wanted her at our front door, but that bitch was here,
Yeah.
right? Banging on the door, give me back my $5,
Yeah.
whatever, right? So I found that it's so important to have
Mhm.
that tribe with
Absolutely.
you, people who are devoted to a similar, not just a mindset, but a similar course of path of life. And
Absolutely.
that's why I was really drawn to your attitude when I first came into contact with you at Kindred on the open mat on Saturday. I was like, wait a second, this person is literally in a very compromised position, and he's fighting his ass off. And wow, he's smiling the whole time. I was so like overjoyed to see that, because I could see that you were
Yeah.
definitely on your path, my brother.
Absolutely.
So what was it like? Did you learn a lot during Rona?
Yeah, I did. I did. So I mean, to kind of answer your first question there, like we kind of had our own, set group of people, right? So it was, for the most part, it was the same, like I want to say like 8 maybe to 10 people that, you know what I mean, we kind of did those roles together, right? And everyone was very like, really like respectful and open with each other, right? There were instances when like someone came into contact with somebody who had COVID, they would message everybody right away like, "Hey, I came into contact with somebody, like I feel fine, I don't have anything, but just get tested," right? And like
Yeah.
everyone will go get tested just to make sure, you know what I mean? And like, believe it or not, nobody in the group like actually got COVID and passed it on to anybody during that time.
Good.
You know what I mean? Even with the whole like body to body contact thing, everybody kept it safe. There was no incidents there or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like nobody was actually like got it, gave it, passed it. The whole group got it kind of thing. So
I know that
nothing like that
they
there.
were talking. It was really important during that time period to exercise,
Mhm.
right? I don't know any great cardiovascular training that doesn't have to be around other people. Like even running in, was a different story. But
Mhm.
like I find doing sports where you're training against yourself
Mhm.
not to be as effective for me. My
Mhm.
my mental health, what excites me about life, I find it in a group setting because of the camaraderie, the
Absolutely.
natural
Absolutely.
tribe you create.
Yep.
You're being on a set journey with
Mhm.
other people. What was the most significant part about not having the studio? You don't have your jiu-jitsu studio.
Yeah.
You don't have the perfect training environment that they create at Kindred. What was it
Mhm.
like for you to be in that environment? Because during Rona, I was doing my bodybuilding prep,
Mhm.
and I found this unopened box of
Mhm.
this is the shit. This is
Yeah.
the work. This is where
Yeah.
it begins right here.
Yeah. No, and honestly, I think it was like I think it was very awesome to be able to kind of go through that, right? Because like if you watch a lot of like the documentaries about jujitsu early on, like on YouTube and stuff like that, right? Like that's how like jujitsu started off in the US, right? It was like, you know, Gracie family and like, other people like within their circle would like just train people in garages. You know what I mean? That was like the inception of it all. So kind of getting to kind of experience that, for that 6 month period, I think was really awesome, right? And like you got, a lot of attention from, higher up folks who are able to kind of give you those tips of like what you're doing wrong, where you're doing well, like what you can do to improve and things like that, right? But like what really kicked it off early on for me was like, man, I came in, I got beat up by people like a quarter my size. You know what I mean? Like dudes half my size were just smashing me, bro. Like there was nothing I could do about it. You know what I mean? Just that feeling of like, man, you just got manhandled by a dude half your size. They threw you around, did whatever they wanted to, and you're like, I was like, bro, any guy, right? They're like, oh, if like some shit goes down, like I can handle myself, right? Like if I got into a fight or you know what I mean, like some dude like came up on me or something like that, like I could handle myself. You realize that you can't. You know what I mean? You're like, bro, like I thought I was a pretty badass dude, you know what I mean? So just kind of
Yeah, 'cause
having
you were
that like
trained in
humbling
martial arts and
experience, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Of like, this dude's half my size, he's able to throw me around and just like do whatever. And I'm like, I want to learn to do that. I want to come back here and do that to this guy. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of my whole like hype early on for it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I think there's so much power. Like if you look at the Gracie family, you can look at Craig Hanaumi, you can look at
hmm
just any person that's in our region right
hmm
now who is a jiu-jitsu practitioner and is a student of this journey, right? We're
hmm
all I don't think there's any like ceiling to this thing.
No,
And
not at all.
I found this that when we were children, you think about, oh, I don't want to have boundaries. I don't want to have to go to bed at a certain time. I think this provides that. There's no boundary. You're always learning. There's always some style. There's always a new move that's coming out. There's always, something that's
hmm
not provided that
hmm
you can create. And every role is different. You're not rolling against the same person with the same set. They're always actively
hmm
learning. So as you learn, they're learning with you. And
Absolutely.
it's this ceilingless
Yep.
thing. And I
Yep.
thought that was so interesting to me, man. That's why I definitely wanted to get into this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, man, there's like insane levels to the sport, right?
Mhm.
Like there's people that like, you train with like one certain group of people, then, you start expanding and kind of like you roll with somebody else and they like hit you with some like new shit you've never ever seen before. You know what I mean? And you're like, what is this, bro? Like, how did you do that? Like, how do I do this? You know what I mean? So it's kind of getting that aspect of it. And then like you definitely will learn a lot about yourself on the mats as well, right? Um, like if we're kind of gonna like, dive deeper right into it, like one of the things that I learned about myself was like, man, early on and like this kind of translated from my life into my jujitsu, right? Was like just giving up, right? Giving up on things, right? When things like would go just like super difficult, right? Just like get like really, really on the deep end, right? It was just like I would like shut down, you know what I mean? And that translated kind of into my jujitsu, right? Like early on when I was getting like just really beat up, I'm like, man, like I would just like shut down and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. You know what I mean? I'm done. Right. And it was like even translating into like my first competition. You know what I mean? First 3 matches I went out, 3 out of 4 matches, right? I lost. And I'm standing there, I'm like, bro, like fuck. Like this sucks, you know what I mean? And I like in my mind, I'm like, bro, like I just want to quit. You know what I mean? Like I don't even want to get on to the fourth match. You know what I mean? I'm standing there, I'm just like, man, like, but you know what? It was like in my mind, it was almost like the embarrassment of giving up is like worse than losing. You know what I mean? I'd rather have this dude
100%.
like smash the shit out of me right now and just like I lose and just walk away than like just quitting and walking away. You know what I mean? I will look like a complete loser if I do that right now. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Got on the mat and that was like the match that I won, surprisingly. You know what I mean?
Nice,
Out of the
man.
4. So like it was one of those things where I was like, it's just kind of like overcoming those mental barriers. You know what I mean? And like what you were talking about the other day, when you saw me the first time, I was rolling with Jeff and I was just like, I was getting the shit beat out of me. I was smiling, having a great time. You know what I mean? Because like I was in a bad position, but I was like, okay, I can try to figure something out. You know what I mean? And like, Jeff's way better than me, man. He smashes me and beats me up all the time. You know what I mean? It's still the camaraderie of like, man, I gotta try to figure something out. You know what I mean? You can't just give up. You have to keep fighting through it. And like, as long as like, you're able to kind of like get your shit back together after you freak out initially, you know what I mean? And kind of like keep pushing through, keep fighting. Like that drive is ultimately what will kind of drive you to success, I think. Right.
Yeah,
So
man, that is something that's across the board of every sport that I've done in my life.
hmm
I've had a very full life. I've been so blessed to have the opportunities to pursue these things. There's never been a time where I couldn't go after something
hmm
because, if I wanted to do it, the only thing that would stand in my way is me. And
absolutely.
a lot of people I've had experience with in life, they're not able to grasp that
hmm
concept that the only one is stopping you from achieving any goal is you,
Absolutely.
and whether or not it's physically possible.
hmm hmm
Those are the two main driving factors. So approaching something new, you might not be great at it when you first start, but of course you're, nervous about being a failure.
hmm
You're supposed to fucking fail. You're supposed to have obstacles show up and slap you in the face and say,
hmm
you think you're going to beat me? Not today, bitch. And then you
Yep.
show up the next day and
Yep.
the next day and the next day. And
hmm
Greg Plitt, really dialed this in for me. One of my favorite motivational speakers. You got to keep throwing shit at the wall and then eventually it's going to stick. And
Absolutely.
success doesn't know whether or not you woke up early,
hmm
whether you gave up the sleep. It just knows whether you show up or not.
hmm
So showing up for your fourth match, no matter what,
Yep.
even if
Absolutely.
your whole brain is like, oh, I don't want to, did it, but you dealt an absolution in a positive way.
Yep.
Show up or not. and you showed up and you showed out, and bam, you won, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was like one of those things where I was like, man, I just like, I mean, I went against like 3 giants. These dudes were really good, really strong. You know what I mean? Just I, like I found out like I think one of the guys was like a rugby player or something like that. So like really tough dude, you know what I mean? And like it was just I was like physically just so drained, mentally hella drained. I was just like I just got beat up 3 rounds by all these dudes, you know what I mean? And like yeah, it's about kind of like helping develop that mental toughness, right? And I think that translates into so many other things, kind of like even your career, whether that be your family life, you know what I mean? Just kind of giving you that mental toughness to be able to like push through those difficulties and kind of like setting your sights on the goal and like driving towards it, right? Whether that goal take you like, some people take some 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever your goal is, right? Some people may get there faster than you. Like you just got to focus on yourself and keep driving.
I definitely agree with that, man. 110%. So what attracts you to jiu-jitsu specifically? Because I know that you're definitely a practitioner of jiu-jitsu. You love the environment.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
I guess you could call it that, right?
I'm still a white belt, so I'm still pretty new. You know what I mean? Like I guess in the grand scheme of things, right? Like
Okay.
you have people who have been doing it for a lot longer than me. You know what I mean? Like I said earlier, I don't even know if my first year like truly counts for a whole lot or not. You know what I like to think I learned a lot, but definitely like past year and a half, like I've been driving pretty consistently, and I want to get to the point where I can like comfortably call myself a practitioner.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay. Well, I would say a student then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a student, like, where does the passion come from to continue it?
Man, honestly, I think it kind of circles back to that depth that you talked about, right? The endless ceiling of like, there's just so much to learn, you know what I mean? And like, honestly, obviously, there's like the physical aspect of it, right? Where you're kind of like, it's an amazing form of exercise, man. The self defense aspect of it, right? Where like you can kind of, you learn to like, again, if God forbid the situation did present itself to like, at least to some extent, you know what I mean, be able to handle yourself and be able to control the situation, right? If something did ever happen, right? It's just like kind of another tool on the tool belt kind of thing, right? I think the life lessons that you get out of it are tremendous. You know what I mean? Like at least in my case, right? Like for some people coming in, like it might just be something for fun. They just do it and enjoy themselves, right? But like still the whole thing that like, I started off with of like, I still get beat up by people half my size, man. Like they're still able to like, and by all means, they'll like let me work early on. You know what I mean? Like when we're starting off the roll, they're going pretty light, just like letting me get my moves in, letting me try shit out on them, right? But then like at a certain point, it's like you feel the shift happen. They're like, okay, I'm taking this bitch over. And boom, I just get smashed. I get beat up. I get submitted. And you know what I mean? That drive of like, man, I want to get to that level. You know what I mean? I want to like strive to be the best that I can be in the sport. You know what I mean? Like I want to be able to do what these guys are doing to me one day. You know what I mean? So that's definitely like a huge part of it for me. I don't know. It's something that like really excites me. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I think that about sums it up for me.
What is you've been doing this for a little bit. So what are one of the first 3 things that you need to learn when you first start? Like what is the 3 things you would recommend to anybody who is thinking about stepping on the mat? They maybe they're sitting there watching their first ever class. They haven't touched their toe into the water to test it out yet, but they're just looking at the water like, oh, this bitch is probably cold. What would you say to somebody who's doing that? The first 3 things to know from your perspective.
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say, well, like in my case, it took me a little bit to start because of COVID partially, right? There were all those regulations and things in place, schools closed and whatnot. But I mean, just start, man. Just go and do a trial class. Go in and do a trial class. It's free. You got nothing to lose. Just give it a shot. Like you have absolutely nothing to lose. Just go in and try it. There's nothing you can really do to like, quote unquote, like prepare yourself for it. You know what I mean? Like even, we're talking about cardio, right? Like grappling cardio is such a different thing. You know what I mean? Like you can run, like just do basic running or, whatever like your favorite cardio is. I mean, probably the closest thing that would ever like prepare you cardio wise, maybe like CrossFit type workouts, right? Where there's very high intensity for like a prolonged period of time kind of thing. But I mean, just get on the mats and do it, man. Like that's probably, I would say, like the number one thing, right? And like some of it is getting over the fear, right? Of like, people may be intimidated by it. You know what I mean? At first, like I started out at Kindred because I had a buddy who went there. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like, okay, I have like this dude that I know here. He can kind of like help support me early on. So that was like kind of a huge thing for me to like overstep that fear and nervousness barrier. You know what I mean? But like once you get there, everyone's super nice. Everyone's really welcoming. You know what I mean? Because at first it was like, I'm 29 years old. I don't know anybody here. Like, how am I gonna just like go in and do this? Like, but I mean, people are really welcoming, really nice, kind of really help like, get you going early on. You know what I mean? Sometimes you'll get smashed. Sometimes people will just kind of let you work more. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, yeah, you just got to kind of get over the fear. And like the fear still is there after a while, right? Like, so I believe I told you early on where I got a knee injury about like 9 months in or so, right? And like anytime I would put weight on that foot, like I would get shooting pain in my knee. So I was out for like 5 months from jiu-jitsu, right? And even for that, I want to say like the last 3 weeks before coming back in, it was all mental for me. My knee was healed up, and I was like, man, like how am I gonna get back there? Like, are people gonna like welcome me again? You know what I mean? Am I gonna be like accepted again? Right? Like, then the next thing that followed was like, man, everyone's gonna be way better. You know what I mean? People who I was able to go head to head with, like, are now gonna be beating me up. You know what I mean? And it was kind of getting over that, like, getting over your own ego to some extent, right? You know what I mean? So it took me a couple of weeks even after I was healed, it took me a couple of weeks to really like get over myself to be able to go back in. Once I went in, obviously everyone was super nice, really happy to see me. Like, I remember like the first time I came back in, Kyle gave me like the biggest hug when he saw me. He's like, man, it's good to have you back. Like this and that, he was like excited to see me, and that like hyped me up too. So yeah, you just got to go do it. Go do a trial class. Find a gym that like is in your area that you can easily get to. And you know what I mean? Once you're there, find good training partners, find people who will keep you accountable. Like when I'm not there for a little bit, like I have people hitting me up like, yo, where you at, man? Why aren't you here? What's going on? You know what I mean? So like,
Accountability buddies.
yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? And that's something that'll kind of, you build those relationships in time and stuff like that. So yeah, just got to get out there and do it, man. There's nothing to really like prepare you. Just like start off, go do, a trial class, do a beginner class. You know what I mean? They'll walk you through the basics. If you want to roll. If you don't, feel free to sit out for the first few weeks. Like first couple weeks, like I had no idea what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like I knew how to like frame someone off, and like that was about it. You know what I mean? So like, when I would start by like specifics or whatever, I was like, okay, I'll start on bottom. I'll start to frame. Like I don't know anything else, but like you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? Everybody starts somewhere.
That was a big thing. I was definitely, I can openly say that I was definitely nervous about for starting, not just with the shoulder injury, but how do I approach something new where I have no experience? I've never wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
I never did any form of martial arts that had to do with being on the ground ever. So my biggest thing was, are they going to put me to sleep?
Yeah.
Are they gonna crawl up my legs like Khabib? Am I gonna be the next Conor McGregor looking dude? Like my biggest fear was, I wouldn't even say fear, I'd just be nervous. I was anxious because I wanted to do a good job. And I think we all wanted that. But when you start anything new, you're going to be a fool. Of course, you're going to be a fool, right? You're going to be inexperienced, ignorant to a lot of things. But you have to, I definitely agree with just showing up. I've wanted to show up I was chomping at the bit. As soon as I showed up, I did three different classes, two and one open mat in the first 24 hours of me being signed up at Kindred. And I'm covered in bruises right now.
Yep.
I'm beat to shit, but wow. Like what an amazing experience to, going to fully immerse myself into a new aspect of life, the tribe, the community. And I can see why it's really easy to just fall into place there, to have a spot reserved for you on the mat where you belong, because you're showing up with an empty cup and getting rid of that ego and appreciating the journey, man. I think it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what do you feel like made you kind of want to get into jiu-jitsu early on? Because you said, you were kind of battling your injury for some time, and like, you've been wanting to try it, but like, I guess what was the driving factor for you wanting to like even give jiu-jitsu a shot?
Oh man. Well, I met Kyle at a sheepdog response shooting pistol course.
Okay.
The protector course was logged out, and I was already filled up because sheepdog response doesn't always come up here, but they came up and I was like, oh man, goodness, I really want to do this. My wife got it for me as a gift for my birthday. She wanted to sign up for the protector course and the pistol course, but I can only get in the pistol. But that was where I met Kyle.
Okay.
I saw this hulking figure walking around looking like you ever seen somebody? You probably seen somebody who's really fucking dangerous, and you can like look at them and say, wait a second, that's not a normal human being. That's someone who is capable of a copious amount of different violent techniques to do things, and they're completely at peace with that.
Absolutely.
That's where I think that that figure, man, really, really drove me to want to begin. That drove it home for me, at least. I had the nail and the hammer in the hand ready to drive in this plank, which is jiu-jitsu for me. and seeing him really drove it in. But
Okay.
the premise, like the basic, was wanting to get to know my body more, wanting to master a craft, which is yourself. Yourself, you can master yourself, but it's one of those endless things too. So the mastery comes with the journey.
Absolutely.
You master certain boxes. So mastering ego, getting rid of it, being just a white belt with a cup that's empty, like Jake Sully in Avatar, right?
Yep.
that is how you like master one box of your life. Another box I wanted to master for myself is not being nervous about a fight going to the ground. There's no more 3-dimensional fights, and I run into issues all the time. And it's not a very practical approach to self-defense to have two things to defend yourself: striking and shooting. Like I don't, removing life from this world is not a positive thing, and striking somebody, it might not always be warranted. So how do I defuse the situation? How do I stop somebody from running me at knife point without having to pull my piece and look out for, oh no, who saw me just pull a gun on some crazy dude in National District in Chinatown? And it happens. It happened to me, and I don't want to have to do that every time. I think it's very beneficial to have other tools on your tool belt, like you spoke about before.
Absolutely.
So that's what really drove it for me, being in real life or death situations and understanding how vulnerable I was. And oh my God, if one thing went wrong here, I would have a lot less blood in me, or I'd be dead. And thank God I just acted instead of froze up, because but I didn't have that tool on my belt. The tool of what happens if this happens. Can you survive? Can you survive? Is the question. So I wanted to answer that question, and I'm probably going to be trying to answer that question the rest of my life.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
This is an endless thing. So that's my plan.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. That's an awesome journey. Yeah. I think especially it's very important for like 2A dudes, police officers or, civilian carriers, like to be able to have at least some sort of bare-based knowledge of grappling, right? I mean, especially like, you'll see, like I heard this on another podcast, which I thought was very interesting, and different people may have different takes on this, right? But this guy was talking about it, like the dudes who like open carry, right? He's like, if you have a gun and you're open carrying, right? And we're in an altercation, that is not your gun. That is our gun.
Yes.
He's like, if I know grappling, he's like, if I'm a good grappler and you are not, he's like, that is now my gun.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like, I was like, man, that's a very interesting take. You know what I mean? On that. So like, I think it's very crucial, right? And like, even kind of the situation that you said, running into like someone, came up on you with a knife or something like that. Just being able to kind of handle that situation, right? Of having like knowing how to control someone, knowing which limbs to control, how to bring them down,
Yes, brother. Guns are distance tools, and there's not a lot of knives or not.
Yeah.
Neither are your hands. You don't want to be within anybody. If someone closes a distance on you and goes for a body lock takedown, or just even is able to trip you up, or you trip on yourself.
Yep.
Because you're not paying attention to the rocks that are behind you. Whatever may happen. The divider in the parking lot for me, it was a divider in the parking lot. I hit my ass, but I had my gun out before he could even get close to me. And next thing you know, he's standing above me, making a decision whether or not he's gonna try to stab me or get shot to death. And I didn't want to feel that situation where I was nervous, because I was nervous. It wasn't a calm. I'm gonna fucking shoot you. It was nervous.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's ever gonna be like a complete calm in that kind of situation, right?
Probably not.
But like again, like I think one thing that like jiu-jitsu will really teach you, especially if you ever like start competing and stuff like that, is like, you're always gonna get nerves, right? Like, I mean, I'm always like, whenever the few times that I've competed, it's like I'm going out, like I'm freaking out going out there. You know what I mean? I'm super nervous. I'm like low-key freaking out, but like it's like learning how to manage those nerves and kind of, control your nerves, like control your breathing, being able to calm yourself back down. You know what I mean? Once you start freaking out, right? There's even been like even like roles in the gym. Like there's one dude, Chris Hunter, heavyweight black belt. Dude, the pressure this guy puts on you, man, like
unreal.
Like I've had borderline panic attacks when this guy is like putting pressure on him. Like I'm like oh, fuck. Like I'm freaking out. You know what I mean? Like, but it's really like being able to like calm yourself, like remind, like I'm okay. Like everything's like, I'm not completely okay. I'm getting crushed by this dude right now, but like I'm okay. I can like gather my breathing, calm my nerves, and like continue to try to work out of, the situation that you're in. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's something that'll have like a lot of carryover, right? And like, there was even like, I've seen so many videos of like, altercations that have happened where like, even before the police got there, this dude was able to, take the guy down, secure him, pin him down, control his limbs, make sure nobody gets hurt, things like that. And they're like, and there's video of it, right? And they're like, how did you do that? He's like, I've done that takedown like 1,000 times in the gym. You know what I mean? So that was like a super easy thing. Like, takedown, control, pin, you know what I mean? But those things will kind of come like with the experience and like being able to calm yourself and control yourself in that, in that kind of like a hectic environment.
So practicing being uncomfortable has a direct correlation with, the future of every situation you deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And is that your take on it as well?
I think so. Yeah. Like learning to be comfortable in discomfort, right? Kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? Where you're in a situation, you're freaking out, but like being able to kind of take control of that and like calm your nerves, calm your breathing, start to kind of like regain focus and like be able to figure out what to do. Yeah, I think that's huge.
So I have a couple of friends that do, competitive jiu-jitsu. They go to competitions, they
Mhm.
smash motherfuckers. And like Rodrigo Lopez is one of my people I look up to. I watch all of his
Mhm.
all of his footage that I can ever capture. But what was it like for you to competing? Because I know you brought it up. That's a whole new aspect of jiu-jitsu.
Mhm.
And like what are the different tiers? What is it like? I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like in terms of tiers, like a lot of it is like there's like a lot of local shows, right? That come around. Like there's Rev, Grappling Industries. We also have Proving Grounds a couple times a year. That's submission only. So like the other ones are points. Proving Grounds is submission only. But yeah, in terms of competing, like I don't think I don't think like I've really dialed in kind of like my style for it yet. Like I haven't been too successful with competing. Like earlier on, especially like I lost a bunch of my matches. Um, I did win my most recent one. That was just kind of like a one-off, like just fun kind of thing that we did between a couple of gyms. But yeah, I mean, competition for me, like especially early on, like I was really freaking out when I was going in. You know what I mean? I was super nervous. Just like you almost like especially like your first couple matches, it almost feels like you're like getting into a fight. You know what I mean? Starting to get that tunnel vision and just everything's like
Adrenaline.
just adrenaline pumping. Like you're just like
Yeah.
I don't know, just really super tensed up and stuff like that. Um, Using a ton of strength, right? So like I remember after my first couple of matches, right? I come back out to off the mats and like I couldn't like ball a fist
Oh no.
from like how just like tensed up my forearms were and arms because like just like a lot of collar ties, a lot of like grips just pulling in and stuff like that, right? So like everything was just super tense. I couldn't even like ball a fist. Like for one of my last matches, I mean, I had to have dude like massage my arm out real quick just so I could kind of like regain some feeling and like get some sort of grips back. You know what I mean? Before going out there, but at least for me, it was super freaky. Like other people, man, they go out, they don't even care. They look calm as a cucumber. You know what I mean? They're just going out, just having fun. You know what I mean? And they're like, they do remarkably well. If you're one of those people who's just like can go out there and remain super calm and just like get after it, like I mean, that's amazing, right? And I'm sure like the more you do it over time, you know what I mean? You get it like a lot better at competing, right? Like you start, training at higher paces, kind of preparing for it better, things like that. Like I think my first competition, I signed up for like it was like a month out and I was like kind of just getting back into the gym, so that was kind of like a motivator for me to like I need to start training hard. It was kind of on like my first comeback after my like knee injury and stuff like that. So I was like, I need to start training hard, like, and this will be like the perfect catalyst for that. So that was kind of my like early on experience with it.
Well, that's pretty badass,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I know that one thing I recognize immediately just by watching some of the videos and just kind of tapping in,
Uh-huh.
understanding what it's like, what are these people going through in the moment. You see a lot of people. It's almost very very similar to how Mike Tyson described some of his boxing matches,
Mm-hmm.
where you look at somebody, you look them right in their eyes, or some people are just completely checked out, like, oh, I'm not going to pay attention, I'm just going to focus on. But some people, or some of the ones I've watched, where the competitors, the people,
Like the
they look
higher
at,
level dudes.
yeah, they look
Okay.
at their opposition as their
Oh yeah.
absolute enemy.
Yep.
I have to destroy this person, and
Yeah.
very, very emotionally invested.
Yep.
Do you think that there is a benefit, or is it a plus or minus for emotionally investing in every single role, every
Mm-hmm.
single bout, every single match? What is it like to you?
I mean, when it comes to your roles, right? Like again, you kind of develop those relationships as you start training, right? Like you'll kind of have the people that you can go, a lot harder with, right? And like you have other people that you're like, okay, I'm going to work like a little bit, a little bit more easier with this person, right? And that's not that like not to say that like, I'm so much better than this person, I'm going to like work lighter with them. No, like I mean, they could be somebody who has, a pre-existing injury, maybe someone who's a little bit older, has a different style than you, things like that, right? maybe some, some people might not appreciate you going really hard with them. You know what I mean? Whereas like me, I'm the kind of person like, bro, I welcome it and I love when people go really hard with me. Like
Mm.
having a fast pace, you know what I mean? Like obviously you want to take care of your training partners, right? Like not ripping submissions on them and stuff like that. Like you want to come back. You're going to come back next week and train with that person
But
again.
the
You know what I
tempo's
mean?
higher.
Yeah, just tempo's higher, pace is higher, grips maybe a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger. You know what I mean? Things like that. But like you start to kind of develop that relationship with people like as you're, as you start training a lot more,
Turn up the heat on them.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'll have the people who love it and like you guys will just send it on each other. Like other people, you'll still get good rolls in, you know what I mean? You just might have a little bit slower of a tempo, you know what I mean? And just kind of have like a different pace of roll with them.
100%,
So-
man. 100%. I know that for me,
Oh.
like just being in the military, it was
Mhm.
really fun just having little fuck around sessions, fighting in the
Yeah,
birthing and stuff like that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But it's way different than
Mhm.
this. This is
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning how to swim for the first time, and I can
Absolutely.
either sink or swim. So
Yep.
it's very, very new to me.
Yep. But yeah, to go back to your question of like, I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to, invest like a whole, a ton of emotion on like rolls in the gym and stuff like that. And I mean, especially, I mean, even in competition, right? Like, at least for me, it's like, I'm doing this for fun. You know what I mean? Like, I started at 29, like, I'm not going to be no world champion, right? Like, this is, I mean, even when I go out and compete, it's like, it's just for fun to have a good time, just test myself against other people. And like, you know what I mean? But there are dudes who like, from, dudes who like grow up like in the slums somewhere, right? Like in Brazil, who like compete at like higher levels and stuff like that. Like for them, when they go in and compete, to them, it's like this guy's like taking food off my table. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like this prize money is gonna like feed my family, kind of thing, right? So to them, like they, they'll come in like you're saying, really intense, very hyper focused on the win and things like that, right? And I think like once you're competing there, it's like you're at a whole higher level. You know what I mean? Even if it's not that specific scenario, you're in there like I need to prove myself. I need to get this W. You know what I mean? So I think it depends on kind of the level that you're doing it at. Um, I mean, for me, it's like I'm doing it for fun right now. So whenever I go to compete, I want to make sure I go in there, I have a good time, I do my best. Um, Make sure I don't get injured. Try not to injure the person I'm rolling with, even though I don't know them. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of dudes like our age. You got a wife, kids, 9 to 5 job to go back to. Like if you hurt yourself, or if you accidentally hurt the other person, they might not be able to work. You know what I mean? So like, it's obviously a point for me to make sure that they leave as healthy as I do. So
So you kind of got to gauge the comfortability of
absolutely,
every rolling partner.
yeah.
Okay. Well, what draws you? What keeps you at Kindred?
Man, honestly, I feel like at this point in time for me, it's like a family. Like I couldn't imagine myself going somewhere else. Like I've been there for a couple of years now, and at first when I was starting off, like I had folks telling me like just find a gym that's like close to you. You know what I mean? Find something nearby that's like pretty accessible. That'll kind of keep you going. You know what I mean? Like make sure that like you're not gonna make the excuse of like I gotta drive like 30 minutes to get there right now. Like it's kind of far away. You know what I mean? Whatever. And I landed at Kindred, which like at the time for me was like 25 minutes away from my house. And actually, now that I moved, it's about the same distance, same time wise. But I've just been going there so long. Like I know everybody. Like I've gotten to like really, enjoy training with the people I train with. Like I passed like 5 other schools on my way there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely like a ton of options that are closer to home. But like, man, I mean, the only thing that would make me give up training at Kindred is if like I moved to like another
Africa.
state or so, yeah, out of state or something like that. You know what I mean? But I mean, the place is amazing. I think everyone's really friendly and welcoming. You have like a really good mix of people, like who attend. Right? You have guys who are law enforcement, guys who are like high level competitors. Average Joes like me who have like a 9 to 5 who are going in and doing this for fun. You know what I mean? Yeah, just a lot of awesome people. That's really what keeps me going back there. Absolutely.
So what are some of the the standout lessons you've learned since you have developed these great relationships with people?
Honestly, probably the number one takeaway that I've had, and we kind of touched on this earlier a little bit, was just like, I guess to sum it up into like a short phrase would be just like never give up and like always keep pushing forward, right?
Mm.
No matter like what position you're in on the mats, and I guess this can translate to life as well, right? Like sometimes you're in such a shitty ass position on the mats, like you're sitting there and you're like, bro, I'm fucked right now, like that's it, it's done. You know what I mean? But just having that like little bit of extra like grit, I guess you could call it, right? To push through and just like keep trying to work out of it, keep on going and like not giving up. And like I think that translates to life in so many different ways, right? Where like we have our ups and downs in life, right? And like in those, in those in those low times in life where you're just like, really kind of down in the dumps, or whatever it may be, whatever the situation is, like just to kind of like keep pushing yourself and like develop that grit to like not give up and just kind of keep going. I think that's probably like, to sum it up, my number one biggest takeaway that I've learned on the mats that really translates into life for me.
So you've definitely done a lot of different martial arts, right? Even
Yeah.
even in just something as two-dimensional as boxing.
Mm-hmm.
What is the key of cross training? Is there a cross training that you do? Is there things you do outside of jiu-jitsu that contribute to it? What
Mhm.
healthy practices are there that you do outside of it that allow you to continue to practice jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. The thing that I've taken up most recently is trying to do like more stretching and kind of like, I don't want to call it like yoga, right? Because it's not, quite yoga. I have like found kind of a series of like stretching exercises that kind of just helps like loosen the limbs up and just kind of get you a little bit more limber. You know what I mean? For being able to come into jujitsu. Um, CBD is probably like a pretty big one. You know what I mean? Just like getting those bruises healed and stuff like that definitely helps out quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like cross training, like I think cross training is definitely awesome. I want to start cross training in Muay Thai a lot more. Not a lot more. I mean, just start in general. But I kind of want to do that once I get a little bit better at grappling, right? Like maybe once I'm like a solid blue belt or something like that, like kind of at that level. That's when I feel like it would be a little bit more appropriate. For me to like start cross training. And it kind of depends who you ask, because I've talked to different people about it, right? And they're like, some people are like, it's not going to make your grappling any worse. Just do it now. You know what I mean? Other people have said like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of good to focus on one thing before kind of, working something else in, or kind of splitting your time. You know what I mean? Just to kind of, that way you have a little bit more of a mastery of at least one art, right? Before you kind of move on to the other one, or like before you start to incorporate the other one, I should say. So kind of different schools of thought. I think that, maybe in like another year, 2 years, something like that, once I'm like a little bit more developed on the grappling side, like that's when I definitely want to take up striking as well. Kind of like what we talked about, just like, another tool on the tool belt kind of thing. So
Hell yeah, man.
yeah.
Hell yeah. I love that. What are some healthy practices to do on a smaller scale? Like when you're focusing on, not tearing up your hand, you're losing your grip during a
Mhm.
competition. What healthy practices are there to prevent those things from happening?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like any kind of exercise that you can do that like gets that lactic buildup going, right? I mean, I know like one of the ones that I was training at a private gym for a little while over the summer. One of the ones that I was doing was essentially it was basically like sled pulls, followed by what are they called? The ladders.
Yep.
You know when you have the I can't think of the name right now. The
Oh,
ladder where you do kind of different kinds of shuffles like in and out of the
yes,
steps and
yes.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, ladders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah. Doing ladders combined with sled pulls, that was like a huge one for me that kind of really led to like a lot of lactic buildup. A lot of farmers carries as well. Kind of if you're talking about the arms specifically, grip strength, any kind of like back exercises that you do, those will also like really help develop the grip strength. Yeah, I think that was a huge one for me. But like, I guess in general, like the feedback that I've received from my coaches is like anything that'll kind of get your heart pumping, right? Like really maxing out that heart rate and really get that lactic buildup going, right, in your arms. For me, those were kind of the exercises there of like sled pulls, ladders, and farmers carries, or farmer walks, I believe they're called.
Yeah. Yeah. Farmers carries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Farmers walks. Everybody calls it something different,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, I never know what the proper term is for it, so I'm kind of like, I'm not sure
You know
which one I
what?
should use,
It's
but
something about a farm, and that's close enough, right?
yeah, they're carrying shit out of farm, man. It's
They'll
like,
figure it out. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. So, what does the future look like for you as far as competing? Are you going to continue to do this forever?
I mean, that's definitely the hope. I'm 31 right now. I definitely want to continue to do this as long as I possibly can, right? And that kind of goes back to like what we were talking about with like those supplemental things, right? Stretching, weightlifting, kind of just like trying to develop your body as much as you can, so that you're able to roll as long as you possibly can, right? The goal is to definitely be able to do this for the next like 20, 30 years, as long as I possibly can, right?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess what would you say, like, or some good like things would some good things that would help kind of develop the body a little bit. Like, you're obviously very athletic. You've done, a ton
Thank
of
you,
different
sir.
sports
Thank
over the
you.
years. And that obviously really translates to the mats, man. You have like an amazing pace. Like, you're able to keep going really well. You didn't look even tired in the slightest when we were done. So,
Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate your compliments, my brother, first
mhm,
of all. And second, I think there's a whole lot that can kind of transcribe into this journey. It's not
mhm,
really something that is it's not a check in the box kind of thing. I think that you can check certain boxes leading up to it. One of the
absolutely.
main contributors that I wanted to make sure that I brought in as a a person, I just spent the last freaking 9 months of my life depressed, not
Mhm,
able to train the way I want to.
mhm,
I had to give up my dream of bodybuilding.
mhm,
I wanted to keep going and get my pro card and then quit.
mhm. Okay, okay.
But I wanted to check that box, and I can't check that box. So closing that chapter, moving into the new chapter where my left shoulder is slightly more forward than my right, and my
Mhm,
shoulder didn't heal correctly. And going through this process, my
mhm,
my main concerns was, is the shoulder strong enough to do this? Am I practicing different exercises that different practitioners of jiu-jitsu regularly show and
mhm,
regularly do? So one big way that I prepared for this is listening to what Craig Hanaumi does regularly
mhm.
on his Instagram, his Facebook, whatever, with the crawling, the bear crawls, the weird jumping thing. It's like this push up
Was it?
jumping
Okay,
thing he
okay.
does, and I really have found that puts a lot of pressure on my labrum
Okay.
and the supporting
It's like
ligament
an
that's
explosive
snapped.
push-up kind of thing.
Yes, an
Like, okay.
explosive push up, and I'll show you more after this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just training my core,
Core is
practicing
huge.
healthy
Core is
eating, making
huge.
sure that I'm plenty of rest, whole lot of water, and I looked at what gifts I already gave myself
Yeah. Mhm.
through bodybuilding.
Absolutely.
I've been lifting heavy shit for a long
Mhm.
time, and then I just dropped 30 pounds. I'm going to be able to move faster.
Mhm.
I'm going to have a lot more. I'm going to feel less lethargic because
Mhm.
I'm an ectomorph. I'm skinny as hell.
Mhm.
I started off at 125, bulked up to 212, and then dropped to 195 to get ready for competition. And then I tear my shoulder. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to do my bodybuilding competition. I'm not going to be able to display my muscle, but I didn't take the powder puff. I call it the powder puff approach,
Okay.
where you just do reps with light ass weight and you build the muscle.
Mhm.
I integrated very, very heavy training with whole lot of deadlifts,
Mhm.
whole lot of barbell squats. I was really getting into the nitty and the gritty of a
Mhm.
bodybuilding prep, which is lifted
Okay.
heavy 5x5s, everything heavy, 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 hard and heavy, hard and heavy, hard and
Mhm.
heavy. And then I would work on the small filler muscles to hit
Mhm.
them from every angle so that my shoulders was protected with every angle of the movement.
Okay.
And I'd received a lot of different criticism from other people I was training with
Okay.
that these are not regular exercises,
Okay.
and but the back needs to be trained from every angle. The
Absolutely.
shoulders need to be trained from most, not all, but most angles
Mhm.
in order to have good dexterity. So I'm not going to be able to do regular exercises and come out of a shoulder injury and practice something that's going to inherently be dangerous potentially to my shoulder.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not going to be real. So I trained in every single aspect. I spent a lot of hours in the gym, nonstop lifting, grab the next weight, different exercise, grab the next weight, different exercise for years. So
Mhm.
that hard and heavy mixed with the integration of lots of reps, dealing with pain,
Mhm.
learning how to cope with the stressful environment of, oh my God, I don't know if we can do another exercise. I don't know if you can do another set.
Mhm.
I don't want to eat this cold food in this escalator covered in grease. Like I'm dropping escalator grease off of me into my food and trying to pick through it with a fork that's broken now after sitting in my bag and falling in the escalator pit.
Oh my
Do I have
goodness.
what it takes to continue this journey? And
Mhm.
the answer had to be yes,
Mhm.
or someone would beat me. There's no yes or no. There's no, oh, I don't feel like it today. Your feelings don't matter. It's yes or no with bodybuilding success.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
very, very absolute thing. So yes or no. Do I have what it takes or not? Quit or persevere.
Mhm.
Deal with the trials and tribulations or be timid,
Mhm.
and that really gave me a competitive edge with how I looked at my shoulder injury. I had to overcome this obstacle.
Mhm.
So for me, something that I'm looking to bring into jiu-jitsu is, for my journey to hopefully
Mhm.
set me up to be a very good student, is to listen,
Absolutely.
be respectful, fuck the ego, appreciate every choke, appreciate every time you have to tap, appreciate
Mhm.
every time you get put to sleep because you didn't tap, that you want to kind of avoid those, right? So appreciate every bruise, appreciate every day I leave jiu-jitsu and I come and lift weights or come and train, or
Mhm.
appreciate every time I take a hot shower and like, oh, thank God. Time to turn it to cold. You know what? Like, appreciate the uncomfortability and just be a good student, because, you know, learning, I can learn. A lot of people would not, you know, from my perspective, a lot of people were like, why do you keep interviewing this white belt? I do want to hear the black belt story. I want to hear every perspective because you have gifts to share with me. So checking the ego, getting rid of expectations, getting rid of standards, and just being receptive of all the lessons and gifts you're going to give me. That is how I'm personally preparing.
Absolutely, man. That's huge. That's amazing. I think your mentality, you know, and just kind of the mindset that you have of like, you know, there's no way I can fail. You know what I mean? I have to like drive forward. I have to persevere. I think that'll I think that'll take you very far in jiu-jitsu. Honestly, I think that'll be like a huge catalyst that'll just really help drive you forward. You know what I mean? And yeah, definitely. I would say definitely tap out before you're, you know, going to sleep.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you know, before
definitely.
you know, there's like intense pain in your ligaments or anything like that. I think, you know, those things are very crucial for longevity. You know, even like that's kind of one of those things where like you know, some of my training partners are like, they've been doing it for a long time. You know, really high level dudes. Not to say that I am because of that, but really high level dudes, and like you watch them, you know, train with each other, and it's like they're going at a very high pace. They get the submission. It's like, I know I have it. You know, I have it. Tap, reset, keep going. You know what I mean? I think that that's what'll like really help like keep you healthy for the long run. You know what I mean? And like, there's even been times where like, you know, they get me in a submission of some sort, and I'm like, over here trying to work out of it or something like that. He's like, and you can like see he's got the look in his eye of like, bro, I got this. Like, just
give up.
Show, you know what I? And I'm like, right, we're good. Move on.
I think the term is tap, nap, or snap.
Yeah.
So you got those three options. You can either tap, pass out, or you can suffer a compromised shoulder, a knee lock. You know, you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
I think one of the craziest things I was able to see is the sweeps that Duck does.
Yep.
So I went on Kindred's page and just started looking at who goes there and who what lessons are there out there for me to learn from. Holy shit, the sweeps he puts on the people way bigger than him are it's very well rehearsed and well practiced.
Oh yeah, dude. The guy's literally half my size. He can throw me around like there's no tomorrow. Like, it's not even funny. And like, and once he gets on top, he feels so freaking heavy. You know what I mean? Like, just because he has the most like amazing, like, he has really good weight placement. Okay. You know what I mean? As far as like pins are concerned, he has amazing like weight placement, understands distribution, understands like, you know, what needs to go where in order to really solidify the pin and like hold someone like me down, where like I'm literally like twice his size. You know what I mean? And like, he's able to hold me down, and I'm like, what is going on? You know? But I think one of the biggest things that we have at Kindred, not to say that like other places don't. I mean, I haven't trained at like that many other schools to like say anything, but like we have so many amazing coaches there. There's so many different coaches that you have the opportunity to learn from, like a ton of different people, and like kind of what you're talking about, right? Just like getting all of these different perspectives in, and like collecting, you know, information from various individuals who've, you know, gathered all of this experience, right? There's, I mean, just tons of like information available for you, like from, you know, just bare base of like working in basics class, like Coach Dreyer, like I've been working with him for, you know, a long time, and I've learned so much from him. He is like an endless supply of information. Like, you know, all of these guys are, honestly. I mean, Kyle, Jeff, Duck, Coach Dreyer, Alfie, Liam, Vikram, all of these dudes that we work with, Luis. I'm probably forgetting some other names right now. But man, they're like, these guys are all like so amazing. Zach Hernandez, he's an amazing wrestler. He teaches the takedowns class usually on Tuesdays. Like, just so much information available out there. So many different people to work with. So you like really have like, you know, so many different avenues to gather information from, and like really learn and develop your skill set from all these different people.
I love that, man. I love that that these people have had a significant impact in your life.
Yeah.
My last question is this, brother, and I think that the answer is never the same, and that's why I love it.
Okay.
Who is jiu-jitsu for, in your opinion?
Honestly, anybody and everybody, whoever wants to take it on, right? Because honestly, I think it's for whoever has like that, you know, inherent ability to try to like try that decides that they want to, push through and kind of learn this art, right? Because coming into like, your very first day one class, getting smashed by people half your size, like I've had acquaintances who come in and they're like, bro, these little girls half my size like beat the crap out of me. You know what I mean? And they're like what is going on? It's like, so it's a wild thing. And that's where it kind of that's where that decision kind of comes into picture, right? Where like either you're like, okay, I just got beat up by these people. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to go through that again. Like I'm good. That's not for me. Or you're like, I want to learn to do that, be able to do that back to these people in like 6 months or a year or something like that, right? And you kind of drive through it. I think it's for, anyone and everyone, but yeah, that depending on kind of who the individual is and kind of what their, what their demeanor is like and what their ultimate goals are. You know what I mean? I think that plays a huge role in it.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that there's so much to benefit from this journey, and I'm
Absolutely.
so like overwhelmingly excited for every step. I was talking with Klutz last night. He said, "Oh, it's a great attitude to have." I told him previously that, God, after sitting there and being told no by life with the shoulder injury, like I met him the day like 2 days after I tore my shoulder.
Okay.
And
okay.
I finished up the pistol course. I could barely even hold my gun straight with my left arm.
Wow. Okay.
And I was still trying to push through and stuff like that. And I was really focused on how do I be better? How do I do better? And I was so mad that I wasn't able to sign up at jiu-jitsu. I was going to sign up at Gracie and Edmonds.
Okay.
But then Kyle talked to me a little bit about jiu-jitsu, about his approach to it. And I said, you know what? I've heard about Kindred before from one of the instructors who was at who teaches with Gracie Barra, their group and stuff like that. And so I really loved that it's an endless thing. You can do it forever.
Absolutely.
You're always going to learn new things. There's always a new way. You're good with just, normal jiu-jitsu. What about without a gi on? Okay, you're good with that. What about weapon retention skills? What about defending against someone who's a two-dimensional fighter? All these things. It's an endless thing. And that's
Absolutely.
what I'm so excited for the journey, my brother.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. And there's like, so many avenues out there for you to be able to kind of like test your skills, expand your knowledge, learn from other people. I mean, it's really an endless thing, man. It's amazing. Dude, we're definitely glad to have you at Kindred, man. It'll definitely be awesome. It's going to be awesome to like be able to watch your development and kind of as you go through, grow, learn, and, be able to see your skills evolve, man. Like your story is amazing, man, by the way. Like, being able to go from like, trying to like compete at a high level in one thing, going through an injury, just like, picking yourself up by the bootstraps and, moving into something else that you can kind of, something else that'll kind of like itch that competitive spirit, right? Like on the inside. So that's
Definitely.
amazing, man.
I really appreciate your kind words, my brother.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your insight, and your experience and sharing it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much for having me, bro. Anytime, you want to run it back, let me know. This was awesome.
Oh, we're going to have to run it back for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely, man. And I want to say a very special thank you to all of my lovely listener support group and everybody tapping in. If you love what we do here at Off the Even Podcast, the best thing you can do is like, comment, share, talk to a friend, or start a conversation. These are all about starting conversations in your life. Do you have a friend who would like to start jiu-jitsu? Do you want to start jiu-jitsu? Maybe show up and take a class, or make sure you make your way to Kindred and check out what we got going on over here. I appreciate Russ and all his time. I appreciate the role. I appreciate you personally for listening to this episode, and I hope that you all have an amazing day. Go kick its ass.